Dr. Stone, episode 15. So, in here we have the gang just like gathering once again, just talking to one another, wondering if they spent too much time gathering rubber, if Stanley was going to be able to catch up to them. As you know, in the previous episode, they deduced that Stanley wasn't that far off from them. So now it's all about like trying to get materials with time enough so that Stanley doesn't show up and just completely obliterate them all. So they even question like whether they should probably go through the Panama Canal and if that's even doable. And I love that Francois was the one that was like giving this like kind of lesson about what the Panama Canal is, and it was done like in a chibi form, so that was like really nice and cutesy for the anime. And I just really love how each character has his own time to shine. Francois is very much hands on everything, very knowledgeable, just like the rest of the people are knowledgeable in their own craft. And then they're kind of like, okay, well, the Panama Canal is probably not a good enough shortcut to take anymore, considering it's been like over 1,000 years of just uh, Earth and everything being inhabited by humans, just everything growing out of control. As we know, the Panama Canal is actually like a man-made thing. So now that there wasn't like any manpower to like keep it in check and keep it sustainable, it pretty much either dried up or was closed off, given the circumstances that they have now. So since the Panama Canal is not going to be a doable option, they decide, well, this is where we're probably going to have to split up. One group's going to keep Stanley busy, and the other group's going to go on and get the resources of so we can make rubber. But there was a catch to this, and the catch was that the person that was going to act as a decoy was going to essentially get shot by Stanley and put out of its misery. So people were wondering like what's going to happen, who's going to be the one that takes the fault, and it was none other than the lab cart. As we know, the lab cart has been with us for like a long time, and it was pretty much deemed as another companion to the group now, given that it has gotten many reiterations of it. It was very well used all the time, but so people have gotten close to it or like had a certain connection with it. So like instead of just being kind of cold hearted about it, people gave it a farewell. And I love how the group split into people that weren't emotional about the farewell and the people that were emotional about it leaving, because they did have some fondness with the lab card. But in truth, this was kind of really genius move on everybody. And I do love the One Piece reference that was put up for this. Very nice. And now that we have that going on with the lab card going on, Stanley and his group had to make a choice whether they were gonna, because they were gonna catch on. There was two separate signals that were being led. One was with the lab card, which was probably a decoy because that one's heading straight to the Panama Canal, and the other one's where Senku and the group are going. But given the situation that Stanley has, he cannot afford to not take the decoy. So, given that his only option was to go for the decoy, Senku banked on that, buying him enough time for them to gather resources and be able to get the rubber and be able to make the bikes necessary for them to cross the South America continent. And I love that while all this was happening, we still have like Sino, who is kind of like in the background just watching everything, and you can just tell that he is kind of taking good observation, seeing the skills that these people have, already coming up with ways to counteract them. But at the same time, he has to play like the part of the kidnapped person or like the hostage. So he plays along with whatever scheme they have going on, which again kind of like uses his love for science as a way to get him to do some dirty work, or like get him to get to working into extracting the good that is used to make rubber. And I love that throughout this, the one thing that Seno really doesn't question isn't really whether the rest of the people are capable. It's the fact that he knows that Senku is very capable scientist. So given that is enough reason for Sinnoh to apply his knowledge and apply his skills to help Senku. Just on that fact. So I love that. Given that Senku was kind of like almost a former student of his or a former person that asked him about a lot of stuff, he knows fairly well that Senku is well knowledgeable and thinks way beyond what this current era can hold. And really, as we've known, he is the only threat to Senno, but given the circumstances, he is more willing to work alongside the science kingdom because Senku is there. And yeah, thanks to the rubber that got extracted, they were able to make tires, and then it was just a battle to the clock with everybody working from day to night, no breaks in between, really just giving their all to making the bikes necessary in order to escape Senno and not Senno, to escape Stanley. And Stanley does eventually catch up to the cart and shoots it down, and it's full speed ahead. So it really was crunch time, which is one of the things I've been liking about this season, is the fact that we're always reminded that there's a crunch time, that we shouldn't let Stanley get too near us or we'll pay the price. And that's been like a constant theme throughout, which is very enjoyable for me at least. And lo and behold, our crew manages to make six bikes, which I love that. Since the ship wasn't going to be any more doable, the ship was that they were currently selling on was all used to make the parts and to use parts to convert into fuel for the bikes. And because the ship had like 6 engines, they were able to make 6 engines for six motorbikes. And I just love that it was literally down to the last second. As soon as Stanley arrived, the bikes were ready and everybody left. I do think they took a bit of time to like rest, and then as soon as they spotted Stanley, they bolted out of there. And I love that they used smokescreen to like kind of hide, and also like use some spare tires on their back to kind of like ricochet or like to block off any like shoots from that were coming from behind. And Senna was more happily to be used as kind of like to shield from in the back. Like he voted for them to use him as like a shield, which one of the guys was kind of like, that's kind of like very interesting that he was just willing to do that to help us, which already lets you know that Sinnoh has obviously some type of plan. There's no way he was just gonna allow himself to be used as a shield without a backup. And lo and behold, his backup was that he was passing Stanley a message in Morse code, one that the others wouldn't be able to see because they have to focus on the road ahead. But yeah, you can pretty much tell that Senno just gave Stanley like, oh, this is where we're heading to next. Like he gave Stanley the coordinates to pinpoint that they're heading deep into the Amazonian forest for the petrification origin. So, and then this is where another like kind of brilliant move of Senku arrived, where it was like the left the airplane behind, and not because their ship had a launching pad, they kind of like Stanley's team was using that to launch their own airplanes, but the airplane that Senku specifically left behind, he filled it with sugar water, which just makes the engine stop working randomly. Like it'll work fine at first, and then eventually it'll just like kaput, and that's it. Which, given that the aerial threat was the only thing that they really had to worry about, Senku planning this way ahead in advance was so nice. And like obviously Senku's too smart to get caught lacking. So yeah, I've been loving Dr. Stone. It's just more science goodness, more one thing leads to another. When we build this, we can make this, and then just how the story progresses as the science progresses, and that's like one of the best aspects to this anime that I really enjoy. So this episode was a nice 8 out of 10 for me.